So we're live.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us this week. On today's episode, we explore the impact of cybersecurity on children's growth and development. As technology becomes deeply woven into every part of their lives, from online learning to social media and gaming, it's critical we understand how to protect young minds while empowering them to navigate the digital world with confidence. Now, we would be remiss to have this conversation tonight without including a mom and an educator on the III podcast today. Oftentimes, it seems like parents are left out of the loop in these conversations. So, whatever's happening at school, the children are experiencing it in the classroom, and they go home, and then the mom and the dad is never included. And so, we decided on today's episode of III, we're going to put parents in the seat for them to be able to have an understanding to further the conversation between themselves, their children, and the educators. So, today we have Tristar Scallion on the III podcast. We're so glad to have you, Tristar.
Talk to us. Here. Yeah, so it sounds like your topic is cybersecurity, correct?
Yes.
And why is it important? I feel as a mom and as an educator that it is extremely important, especially in 2025, where Gen Zs and millennials, and I can't think of our new term after the Gen Zs, but anyway, they live on their phones, they live on social media. And as an English teacher and as a research teacher in high school, 2 years ago, ChatGPT came out, and it seems like cybersecurity was a big thing. And I actually have had some experience where I was able to share how to use ChatGPT in a positive way and why cybersecurity is important. So I guess I can talk about cybersecurity first, and then we'll go, if you don't mind, we'll go into the why it's important to share with this generation on why and how ChatGPT can be used and can be used in a very lucrative way.
Absolutely. Yes. Tell us why cybersecurity matters for kids, for youth, for young adults, for teachers. Talk to us about that, why it matters, and then how to use it effectively.
So why it matters is, number one, safety. I know as an educator, we have these trainings to take at the beginning of the year. They're long, they're boring, but for instance, specifically this year, I felt like this year's cybersecurity video was actually very relevant because we have so many people, predators, people going online. Some children are still latchkey kids where they get home, their parents are not home, they log in, they log on, they're on their cell phones. And the number one target, I'm sure, is predators looking for young adults. I teach secondary, so I spend a lot of time with young adults who are between 12 and 18 years old. Mm-hmm. But the group that I'm most concerned with are the 12, 13, and 14-year-olds, because they are vulnerable, they are young, they have not been educated. Unless we teach them how to be safe online, they could be taken advantage of.
What type of online threats are they facing specifically?
Probably, I would say, I don't know the statistics, but I'm just thinking like, how to lure in a young girl, I would say, to meet me in the chat room or meet me here. Let's have a conversation. They meet and then they start talking and having open discussions. And, I don't know what the conversations are like, but I can imagine what they could be like. Because kids sometimes share and they talk about it in the classroom. Like, hey, I was online, we
Yeah,
did
if I
X, Y,
can,
without
if
going
I
into
can just
details.
add one example to that, the boys will get in the trap of speaking or chatting with a uh, you know scammer that's to pretend to be a female and asking for the boys' picture.
True.
So you can imagine the psychology of girls asking for the voice of the picture. It's a easy shoot for the scammers. And what they do and turn around and say, now I have your picture. Now you're about to get exposed unless you do, which is a ransom, pretty much taking the hostage of those pictures and saying, I'll delete it if you just give me some money. But okay, yeah, $5 here, $50 here, $500 here. It's a very lengthy psychological impact on the boys, where many of the boys have experienced psychological, issues over the lengthy period of time. But now, if you think about it from that perspective, oh wait, that makes sense. But here's where the scammer even gets even worse than that scamming. What they do is they will turn around, send a message to the boy saying, like, I think you're being scammed. Let me help you get the scammer off your back.
Hmm.
So this double dipping of scamming, where to say one person is scamming off of the picture, the other guy is saying, I'm gonna attack the other guy who's scamming you and pay me so that way, I will get the picture back for you. Right. So it's a vicious cycle. So as a parent, it really is important that we speak these languages to them and say, hey, you will probably experience that more likely than not, right? Because the amount of scammers that are out there, they're not necessarily targeting one. They're scamming a bunch of people all at once. So they spray their scam to thousands and thousands of people, right? Just to see which one comes back. Just to kind of give you another example of it, the adult guys like me will get a text message from somebody who will send a picture of wine bottles saying, dinner tonight, right? Or send. I get that all the time. I'm flattered, but at the same time, what you can do, and this is a solution that you can take that text, don't necessarily copy and paste it, but take a screenshot of that text and put it in Google and say who's getting scammed in this number from this number with this sort of information. So you can tag that spam as a scam that's happening, because you can now create a database of these sort of messages from this specific number. So problem with numbers is that there's just way too many of them, and then sometimes it's even stolen. So for example, somebody's used numbers being repurposed for the scammers. You have many ways to look at it, but these scamming happens first in the spray, like they spray all around, and then whoever does respond to that, they start all of a sudden creating a targeted profile around that. So say, for example, if I responded, they'll figure out that I'm not an adult of certain age. They'll figure out what age I am and then go from there. But what they're doing is they're baiting me with multiple texts, right? So wine is one example, but if the wine doesn't work, they will send a picture of something like, come and pick me up from the airport. I'm here already, right? You can imagine how persistent they are in order to figure out if they can get one response from you, that's enough to hook you and start the conversation from that point. For an adult like me, I'll tell you, the amount of scams that I get on a daily basis, sometimes I just have to sit there and look at it like, who am I supposed to pick up from the airport at this time, right? My brain starts thinking. Now for the kids, it's a whole nother story. They don't have time to think. They have to be instant, because otherwise.
I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm thinking about what Tristar, what you said before with regard to kids coming home, the latchkey kids. In that space alone, the psychological and developmental risks of unmonitored exposure that now you're entering into your home and you're getting immediately online and you're having these conversations. Listening to Asif with the wine bottle, I'm thinking about the young boys and young girls that are going online, and then the people that are attempting to talk to them through Messenger are Messenger is just one of the ways, and then they're not who they say they are. For example, Homeland Security. We've been seeing Homeland Security working overtime. Thank God. I'm all about the bus, right? Harsher punishment for child and sex offenders. Where Homeland Security, they have been catching predators through online sources where young girls and young boys were being lured places, and then it was an adult male coming to take advantage of them. How do we keep that from happening? Like, what do we put in place? What type of conversations do we have with our children, whether you're a parent or an educator, with what to look out for, what not to do, how not to engage? Like, do we come from a proactive space, like this is what can occur, or do we come from a place where a fear based, like don't do this because this may happen? Like, what is the best way to educate the kid as well as the parent to have these conversations in an open forum where it's a safe place to discuss it?
Yeah, I mean, Trista, I'll let you go. But as a boy of father of three boys, my brain is just going all different directions. But for an educator like you, I would like to learn and see how I can apply that.
I don't know. I think of actually one important source is our librarians in schools. I know for me, anytime I had any type of questions for cybersecurity or just teaching our students safe spaces and safe ways to navigate the internet, to navigate the tools that they have, is to show them how. So it sounds a little old school, but librarians have a plethora of training skills and tools that we can share with parents, we can share with our students. And from that alone, I feel is very important. And then, like Masako stated, having these conversations, it could just be a simple advisory lesson, or it can be in your homeroom class in the morning. And then the more you're talking about it, the more kids are going to talk about it, because it's important and it's so necessary and needed. You know, something could happen tomorrow and be like, oh, we discussed that when I went to the library yesterday, or we discussed that in the counselor's office. We had a mediator and we had a roundtable discussion. So those conversations are so important.
Are these conversations? Hey, Bobby Ray, Tristar, are these conversations happening on the school front with librarians and the students?
They have happened. I won't say they're happening for me this year, but in my previous campuses, yes. Because I was the type, I was always reaching out and using them as a resource, because I used to teach research. And so it brings me to also looking at the online tools from not necessarily a cybersecurity perspective, but more so like, hey, I want to use ChatGPT to write my research paper. And so we're like, okay, well, we can show you how to use ChatGPT. But just to say, I'm going to use it to write a research paper, that's not okay, because it is going to be ran through a system. AI will be detected, and you will be doing that 4,000 research paper over again. I've actually been a part of that conversation with.
How do you talk to the kids about, we know that you have this research paper. What is the proper way to use a language model when being assisted for your homework assignments?
We demonstrate for them. So I use my own papers that I've used for
the listeners, for the watchers and listeners. Can you give us some examples of the smart way to use a language model to help you do your work, your homework assignment?
You want to show them an authentic paper versus an AI paper. Human words versus robotic words. We all know that AI, the tone of it can be robotic. And so children are not, they are as intelligent as, if you think they're not as intelligent, they are. It's just you have to bring them to the awareness. Hey, this is out there, so be very careful. So I used to use my own papers to teach, but I've been to grad school a couple of times. So I literally would use my own papers to show them this is my voice versus this is an AI voice. And that's how you give them authentic pieces of paper. And then there's a database where we can access through College Board. I know I'm kind of being a little too deep here, but not having the mini lesson does not make the issue go away, because ignorance is bliss. And they will say, well, no one told me. Well, yeah, we had this mini lesson on May 25th, 5th period at this time. And so once you show them, they're going to use it. If you don't ever have the mini lesson or ever have the conversation, then young people are they're going to grab at what's easy and fast and quick. We're in a microwave world, and fast and quick is not the best way.
Awesome. So we're talking about the practical strategies for building a safe digital environment at home and in schools. Bobby Ray has joined us. Bobby Ray Tristar is an educator and a parent. So we felt it paramount to have her as an educator and a parent to come on and share with us her strategies of cybersecurity and why it matters for kids and what type of online threats are out there and what parents can be looking out for to engage in the conversation with other educators to instill digital awareness and critical thinking. So we are glad to have you here. Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day. Well, I'm glad to meet you, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. I think cyber safe is really important for young people today because they have threats that we just simply didn't have, right? Not just individual and bad actors, but even corporate threats. The whole social networking situation was designed to hijack parts of human development in those developmental years, so it would become a permanent part of their life. It was the new cigarettes, if you will. So understanding what cyber safe means, that it's always evolving, that most curriculums nowadays are looking towards not just here's your one class on it and have a good day, that those briefings are integrated into syllabuses and to lessons plans to make sure that people understand, hey, by the way, here's the latest, or did you know that? Because the front always evolves, and I'm hearing some wonderful things when it comes to AI and understanding that they need to evolve and we need to evolve too, as far as both from the professor side and from the student side as to how do we use AI. It is a great launch point, but it's all about those lenses, different perspectives. I need to see your opinion and your view based upon who you are. Don't just give me some facts. I mean, I will say, in the defense of young people, because I used to be one, my family had a set of encyclopedias. So many of those papers I wrote were straight out of the encyclopedia. So I'm just saying.
Well, it's interesting because I'm listening to you, Bobby Ray, and my synapses are firing, because if you're saying that the AI is the new cigarette and AI leverages knowledge and books are being replaced with electronic books and handwriting is being removed, although that develops brain development in handwriting, help me understand. Friend or foe? Like, is this friend or foe?
Or both. I think what really comes into play is the speed at which things happen, right? When we were in a more analog situation, there was time for teachers to really review, really get into, what they're doing and what they're saying. But now as things are electronic, as fast as the students send it in, they're expecting a grade back. Like, really? Did you think I, as the professor, am not a computer? You may have used a computer to generate this content, right? But that being said, I think something important that we all need to keep in mind is talking about the business side of cyber danger, right? Everyone thinks it's the creep in the van, and there is that for sure, right? Or someone in the basement trying to get at a kid, and there's definitely that for sure. But from a business perspective, keep in mind you got AI tools, and then you got tools that they sell to academia to help detect AI, written paper, or plagiarism. But then they got sites that use AI to try to trick those systems. The same company owns all of those backends. Just like Bayer makes Roundup, and they make cancer medications. I'm just saying. So it's nothing new. It's just in a new venue, and we just have to be cognizant.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we're talking about the latest of artificial intelligence, friends and foe, um, one of the things that we really amplify a lot is a small set of data that we all can agree on. And that goes without saying that that's how human brain works, and that's how also artificial intelligence, that's how artificial intelligence works. It takes a small set of data that we all can understand and say that's the major incident that's happening. Well, then you forget the other major sets of data, which is that everything else is happening. It's just that it's not on the news feed. It's not on the news cycle. It's not pressing at this point. So one of the things that I really want to just bring to the front here is that when you outsource knowledge, there's negative to that. But when you outsource knowledge, there's a positive, which is that everything we do in the planet has some fundamentals in it, which is that, either the single plate that all things grow out of. And if we look at that fundamental continuously and practice understanding that fundamentals only, everything else up here is just a bunch of leaves and tree branches, right? It's the fundamental that matters the most. So if you think about those fundamentals, what happens over time as we grow, we become full of knowledge, but zero understanding. And those fundamentals is not knowledge. These are the understanding. The reason you understand anything is because you've been through those fundamentals, right? You cannot retain those knowledge because your understanding, the fundamentals are lacking. So if you revisit those fundamentals continuously, it's kind of like, you know how to write paragraphs and essays, but you forgot your A, B, C, D, X, Y, and Z, right? That's your fundamental. So take that small set of information and apply that to everything. Everything has a fundamental. Everything has a knowledge tree, but the fundamental is the understanding, right? So how do we understand topics differently, understand it better? It's kind of going back to that cybersecurity things of discussion. Cybersecurity is not the problem. It's your data, right? Your data is the fundamental. You have to understand your data so that way you have the knowledge of cybersecurity. A lot of the time we have cybersecurity knowledge, actions and tools, ChatGPT, Gemini, all these tools that everybody else provides to us, yet we have a little bit of miscommunications about fundamentals, right? We don't understand the data. We don't understand why we're being educated. We don't understand why it's important that we are able to read and write, right? I can create so many examples of why we need to read and write, but we have to really understand that data is what we have to understand in order to understand ChatGPT, in order to understand cybersecurity. Because cybersecurity is nothing more than protecting those data. That's why cybersecurity exists. The reason the threat exists is because somebody's trying to steal those data, right? Use those data to do harms towards us. So when you have understanding of fundamentals and you allow yourself a lot of room because you're not so bogged down by the knowledges, that you are able to look at the fundamentals and go back to fundamentals and understand it far deeper. And that's kind of one of the things that I always convince myself with that, hey, lots of negative, but the positive is just this. You are able to go back to the fundamentals and say, this is what we have to stick with, because if we cannot pass this on to the next generation is going to be full of knowledge, zero understanding. And if you don't understand, you never take action, right? So when you have to break it down from that perspective, just to give you a quick glimpse into how it works in the IT space, is that you have information everywhere. But if you understood what data to extract to turn into a knowledge, that's how you take action with information. See where I'm going with this? It's always something that you have to start with, but you just don't do whatever you do just, because somebody else does it. You do it because you understand it, right? If you can extract data, you can understand it. And if you can understand it, now you can take action with those data, right? Meaningful data, not just useless garbage data or text data that's coming in. So I just want to put that out there because I know we have many ways to go about this, but there's just always this fundamentals that we can always go back to and say, how does that work? How does that apply to us personally, right?
Well, I want to go back to, because we were talking about the importance of parenthood and educators and children being in the cyber security space and keeping our household safe. So what type of parental controls and privacy settings actually work?
I think Tristar headed very heavily is that when you are discuss it continuously, not off kind of like, hey, we went to the picnic that one time, the weather was perfect, didn't rain at all, no bugs anywhere, right? Not that day. I'm talking about continuous conversation about that. Joke about it, make references about it. I think Tristar hit it very heavily that if you reference it, it sticks a little bit more because you're creating multiple examples in a person who's very impressionable and will behave based on their understanding, take action, remember? So the configurations that I think me and you can talk about is based on if you have this sort of system in your house. Are you a Microsoft family or a Google type of family? Are you a Cisco family or are you, NVIDIA type of family, right? We don't know. If you're like a full house full of Apple products, we might have to talk about configuration differently. But all configuration is based on the simple understanding that when you're watching a Netflix movie, talk about what's happening in that Netflix movie. Reference that, right? I've been watching movies and TV shows all my life. I can hand count the ones that I don't remember about technology because that's personal to me, right? Whatever's personal to you, make technology a little bit more personal because you are using phones all the time. You're using tablet, laptops all the time. Your TV is an internet. Your TV is a smart TV, has internet in it. So you kind of have to, just like you would talk about, say, a rom-com show that you love so much, talk about the fact that that rom-com had some technology discussions in it and turn that into a teaching moment, exemplary moment, right? I'll pause at that, but I thought that was a very powerful reminder that Tristar gave, and I love that.
I really love the fact. I love that. I think it goes back to begin with the end in mind, right? It is really about the exchange of information, the exchange of knowledge. It doesn't matter the format. It doesn't matter the person, how brilliant they are. What did you communicate across? What did they understand? A lot of times people say, any paper you've ever wrote is what, tell them what you're going to tell them and tell them what you told them kind of thing. Well, we got to kind of expand upon all of those things, add something before you tell me what you told me. Tell me why, the with them. Why should I care? What's in it for me, right? What is it that's unique in what you're telling me that I couldn't have Googled? Because so much information is in their hands, then require more. They're smart. From kindergarten on up, they can rise to the occasion. Keep asking for more. You got all of this information. Great. How does that affect us? How does it affect you? So when you add perspective that they can tie it into their own life, have their own life skills now grow because of it, now you've actually done something. I have a person on my team. He's relatively new and recent MBA grad, and he's very textbook, but his people skills have some work to do, right? So in that space, he keeps saying, I just got my MBA. Yet not a single person on your team interacts with you on a regular basis. Where's your people skills? There's more to it. So he literally is the personification of, I have a lot of information, but how do I apply it to life to make a situation better, to make relationships better, to make the exchange of ideas better? I've never, in many years, I've never had an entire team to come and say about their boss, I don't want to work with him or anything. I would rather do it myself. That's the problem. Because while he processes and can recapitulate information or he sends me whole info papers or white paper, and I'm like, I really don't think he realized that I can see Copilot all up in this. But when I ask, how does this benefit the company? Well, it just should. I said, well, you got a master's. It just should is not the answer I expect, right? So that whole piece of, it's not just young people, it's all people. We got the information. Now, what do we do with it? Require the why.
All right.
It
So
goes
how
back to something I was saying earlier in the week. Application. I did a post on the application of I am, right? I was
Mhm.
like, that, we use that term I am so gingerly. But what are you IMing? Like, what use case are you using this for? Yes, you have a whole plethora of information, but is there any commonalities of anything in that? They're so far removed, and it makes me think about being proactive versus retroactive. Here recently, coming out of a season where the royal was, she always wanted to watch this particular creator, so it frightened me after a while. I was like, let me come sit down and watch this with you. What is so giving about this particular creator? So I take to the internet to find out where this creator's from, if there's any type of information that is in alignment with this name and this brand. Is this something that I should be concerned with? And it's like, as a parent, why should I have to come back after the fact because I'm so concerned that my child is involved in something so deeply versus doing my due diligence in the beginning? It's like, I don't want to be late to the game. I want to be proactive and steer her in directions to keep her safe at all times. As all parents, I would imagine, want that for their kids. But as we were talking about in the beginning, when Tristar was saying there was a lot of latchkey kids that are going home alone and jumping online and, being exposed to things that, some things you see you can never unsee, and it changes your life trajectory forever. And so how do we just keep our family safe from the beginning of it all?
I think it's covered in, what was it? Was that Everybody Lies, or was that Thinking Fast and Slow, where it talks about that the kids can learn about things that we didn't learn about until our late developmental years just through a simple Google search. So before they can learn how to navigate life, they're learning about strange things that even as adults make us blush, right? So there's some things as a parent that you need to learn how to do. So for example is, whatever device or however your family connects to the internet, you need to learn how to password protect the admin account to that device and go through the logs and see what they're looking for. They don't have privacy rights in your home, just like your parents would go through, listen on the phone or go through, see what's going on, because they may not recognize danger for what it is. And while they have time to, if they're not a latchkey kid, while there's time to do your homework should be done on the computer that's in an open place in the home. So whether it's the dining room or wherever that is, it shouldn't be some place where they can go down a rabbit hole and not know that you might look over their shoulder at any time, right? That's important because it changes behaviors. There's a thing about character, but character grows and is developed over time. You could tell folks who haven't had a lot of character development because they do things when no one is looking differently than they would if people were, right? So, that there's no substitute for your role as a parent. And working with educators is essential. I know my children hated it that I had a relationship with every teacher. Every teacher. There was not a day that went by that there wasn't an email back and forth or something going back and forth. It's like, why you got to talk to them? No. But what you won't be able to do is pretty much is cut them off altogether. You got things like quiet time or whatever that you could put into your devices. Yeah, that may work. Depends on your kid. I know with my kids, not only did it not work, because I would disconnect and take the router into my room and secure it in my closet. All I did was get Wi-Fi passwords from the neighbors' kids, and they were back on. Right. So, and now I had no visibility into what they were doing. So,
Yeah. That it's just best to stay open and stay in a safe environment where there's an open line of communication. So no matter what comes up, they feel, my parents, even to other kids, right? When you want to, at least I see this is what I hope to continue to do, to be the parent that my child would say to the other kids, hey, you can talk to my mom about it.
Yeah.
We can go to my mom
Yeah.
We can go to my place, like be the place that everybody wants to come to. So you always know what's going on, and all of the kids know that they're in a safe space.
And people mistake that for being a open parent or a parent that has open communications with the young people in their lives. And I say the young people in their lives because it's not just their kid. If you're that parent, you probably got nieces and nephews and other folks' kids who come and talk to you. And I tried to be that way with my children. And for the most part, I was, right? It was not always easy. So just let me put that out there. It doesn't mean everything's okay, but it does mean you cannot overreact when they're honest with you, right? And sometimes I can remember 2 different occasions where a subject came up based upon something they saw on the internet. And I said, yes, this is out there. It's something you probably don't want to be involved in. And I promise if you remember to ask me when you're older, I will tell you why. But for now, I need you to please just trust me. Oh, and a couple of years later, remember when you said they kept track. But they trusted me because I did not always overreact, right? Not in front of them anyway. I might have to go into my bathroom and scream until the towel. But do not overreact, because if they're seeing it, the threat exists. And you can't be so busy forcing what you think their reality should be that you're not paying attention to what their reality is.